Welcome to the Monday, March 11th, 2019 meeting of the Falls Church City Council. We are delighted to have you all here with us. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Madam Clerk, will you call roll, please?
Ms. Connolly?
Here.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Ms. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Litkenhouse?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Mr. Z?
Here.
Mayor Tarter?
Here. All right. Thank you all very much. There's no bowling going on at the roof, but they are actually working on the roof up top, and hopefully we'll finish up soon. So that's what apparently is going on this evening. Do we have a motion regarding the meeting agenda before we get started?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the meeting agenda as revised.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, the ayes have it. So again, welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us this evening. Before we get started, I am going to ask, there looks like there's some proclamations on the agenda. The first one relates to Women's History Month. And I'm going to ask the Vice Mayor, who's been instrumental in our Women's History March and celebration, to do the honors.
Thank you. This is a proclamation declaring March 2019 as Women's History Month in the City of Falls Church. Whereas women from diverse backgrounds have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of the United States, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the City of Falls Church in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and whereas women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in creating a more fair and just society for all, and whereas women have been making history in Falls Church since the 1600s, and Falls Church has been home to noted abolitionists, educators, and visionaries. And there are many opportunities to learn about women's history in Falls Church, including the third annual Women's History Walk, which honors women who built community in the City of Falls Church through their steadfast involvement and dedicated leadership. And whereas the walk is an opportunity for citizens of all ages to learn about the women who came before us, including Harriet Foote Turner, a free woman of color who led 12 enslaved people to freedom, Maddie Gundry, a businesswoman and educator who was one of the first women elected to town council in 1921, Jessie Thackeray, a citizen activist for schools, and Marion Costner Selby, the first African-American student to graduate from George Mason High School. And whereas the 2019 Falls Church Women's History Walk will take place on Sunday, March 31st to honor women for their contributions to Falls Church history, and where organizers of the History Walk have asked all citizens to carry on the legacy of these women by making a positive difference in the City of Falls Church and the world.
Now, therefore, I, David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim March 2019 as Women's History Month in the City of Falls Church and call on all of our citizens to observe this month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities, including participating in the Falls Church Women's History Walk on Sunday, March 31st, 2019. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak at this time about this? Yes, welcome. Come on up. Oh, I was talking about.
Members of the council.
Before you get started, is this about the Women's History Proclamation?
Oh, no.
Well, why don't we give you just a second more? We've got one more proclamation to get through. My apologies. All right, our next proclamation is about our Northern Virginia Regional Commission, our particular planning district. And since I'm the representative to the Planning Commission, I think I'm going to go ahead and do the honors, if I might, this evening. Whereas the Virginia Area Development Act passed in 1968 created the Planning District Commission framework to encourage and facilitate local government cooperation and state-local cooperation in addressing on a regional basis problems of greater than local significance. And whereas following the passage of the VADA, the Commonwealth undertook an aggressive effort to establish planning district commission boundaries, the last of which were announced in 1969. And within 1 year, planning district commissions were established in 19 of the original 22 districts. And whereas in 2019, Virginia's planning district commissions, now 21 in number, are celebrating 50 years of promoting and supporting regional collaboration. Whereas Planning District Commissions serve to foster intergovernmental cooperation by bringing together elected and appointed officials and citizens to discuss common needs and develop solutions to regional issues. Whereas Planning District Commissions implement services and provide technical assistance to their member local governments. Whereas Planning District Commissions often serve as liaisons between local and state governments, partnering with the Commonwealth to carry out state initiatives at the local and regional level. Whereas the City of Falls Church is a proud member of the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, the planning district composed of the 13 local governments in Northern Virginia. Whereas NVRC plays a key role in promoting regional programs and policy in the areas of the environment and energy, emergency planning, land use and transportation and planning, military community partnerships, and housing and human services. Whereas outstanding examples of NVRC programs include the Solarize campaign, 4 Mile Run restoration, LEED streetlights, electric vehicle charging stations, the Ryan White HIV Consortium, Go Virginia, the Northern Virginia Aging Network, to name a few. Whereas Planning District Commissions take great pride in their regional accomplishments while recognizing the importance of looking ahead to the challenge of the future. Now, therefore, I, David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby commend Virginia's 21 Planning District Commissions on the occasion of their 50th anniversary. And I would like to particularly commend the one we're in, whose executive director is in the front of the audience, Bob Lazaro. And I'm going to go ahead and invite him to come forward and speak. And while he's coming forward, I'm going to sing your praises. Bob has done a fantastic job as the executive director these past few years, and former mayor as well. So I think he's seen both sides of the action. But NVRC has done a lot of great work. So maybe you could tell us a little about what's going on with the commission.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for recognizing our service. And it's delightful to be able to work with you as a member of the commission, your council, and the staff. We have a good working relationship. I saw my friend Mr. Stevens here. I don't want to steal his thunder, but one of the most important programs we'll be working on kicking off this April is our Solarize campaign, which the City of Falls Church has been an inaugural member of. We're looking forward to kicking that off. The bids are coming in now. The prices are very competitive, and I think we'll do very well. Lastly, I would just like to say, as you know, we resolved our issues with the state regarding the Ryan White HIV program. We serve over more than 2,000 folks within the region. We've been very successful in helping keeping people virally suppressed and providing an important health service to the community. With that, I'd just like to say thank you. We will be celebrating officially at our April 25th meeting at NVRC offices near the Mosaic District in Fairfax County. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Mr. Lazaro? Mr. Z?
Thank you, Mayor. I've gotten to know Bob Lazaro over the years I've been on council here, and I would have to say that he's one of the finest examples of citizen leadership, and now executive director of NVRC, a man of enormous talents and appetites for work that others may shrug, and he seems to prosper in all that, and I do really thank you, Bob, for all the work that you've done, and especially with regard to the Solarize campaign. The Solarize campaign this year, for all those that are listening, is probably represents the optimum position with regard to tax credits and the price of panels. So if you don't do it this year, there's next year, of course, but this is the year you're going to make the most money on installing solar panels in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. So thank you for all your work on that, Bob.
Well, I'd just like to, if I may add, the Solarize campaign has netted more than 2 megawatts of solar, and which is nearly 4% of the statewide net metered solar. So it's been an impressive effort, and it's the local governments, citizen activists who've been very instrumental in sharing the information. You're absolutely correct. This is the last year that the federal investment tax credit will be at 30%. Next year it drops down into the mid-20s. So I would urge my fellow residents who are interested to check it out. It's absolutely free. We have a tool online that's free, novasolarmap.com. You could check out your own house, see how large a system could fit on your home, how much energy it'll produce. And we've added a new metric to it, how much CO2 the system would avert if you went solar. So it's a nice tool, and it really works very well. So
And
thank
each
you for
year-
your comments.
And each year, you may recall, we've had a little challenge, lighthearted challenge with our neighbors, and once again, we hope to crush Fairfax and Vienna to a pulp. So anyway, any other comments or questions for Mr. Lazaro before? All right, again, Bob, we'll see you soon, and thank you much. Mr. Shields would like to.
Well, I would like to just add that our mayor is soon to be the chair of the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, and so we're taking over. So watch out. But congratulations to the mayor on that as well.
Bob, I have the proclamation. I don't know if you'd like to take that with you. All right, let me go ahead and find. There it is. All right, you want to come? Let's do a picture. There you go. Turn around.
Okay, we'll do this. How's that?
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on. Thank you, Bob. Any oaths of office to administer this evening? All right, we're going to keep moving then. Let's go on to public comment and start with receipt of written comments. Madam Clerk?
Library Board of Trustees Chair Chet DeLong wrote on behalf of the board to request exceptions to policies regarding funding for the library renovation. Cheryl Cohen expressed concerns regarding the proposed hotel location and height for the West Falls Church Economic Development Project. Isabel Davis provided additional information about a request to allow ownership of certain exotic animals in the city, and John Tepperman forwarded articles and a suggestion about electric vehicle charging stations.
All right, thank you very much. So we are going to now go on to the receipt of public comment. Those of you who filled out speaker slips, I know we got you. You're going to, you can come forward and speak for 3 minutes. We ask that you state your name and address for the record. We also have a annual report of the Environmental Sustainability Council, and we're going to ask that that go right after public comments. So just in just a moment or two, we'll get to you all. But let's go ahead and start with the comments that we have from our speaker slips. First one is Robert McCann. Come on forward. I'm sorry about the misstep earlier, but welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Bob McCann. I'm a resident of the Byron, 513 West Broad Street. I've lived there since it was built 12 years ago. I have a deep interest in the global climate crisis, and haven't been too up to date on what the council has been doing. But I have taken a lot of time to study the issue, and I'm very aware that the 2018 report on a worldwide basis by the scientists said the time for dealing with a climate collapse is only 12 years, and scientists are saying it's perhaps the greatest period of crisis in the history of the human race, what we do in these next 12 years to avert or delay climate change. So my proposal, my thinking is that whatever we can do to step up further the planning that we already have made and done would be a most appropriate thing to do. In preparation for this, I went back and re-watched Al Gore's 2016 documentary. He did one, you remember, in 2006, and then again in 2016, An Inconvenient Truth. And his statement basically was that we've done a lot of good things to forward the work on climate change. But mostly what we've done is work that has not inconvenienced us too much. And the inconvenient truth now is that we have to move this up to the very top of our priority list because it's a global crisis. In his documentary, he talked about a few communities who have done an extraordinary job of dealing with the climate issue. And one of these that he talked about is Columbia, Maryland. And he said Columbia has just done an extraordinary job of putting itself on the line, dealing with the crisis at hand. And I went to the Columbia Town Council of Columbia, their website, and looked at it and found that in the year 2015, they have become totally energy dependent only on wind and solar. 100% wind and solar came about in 2015. Turns out that they get 75% of their wind from their solar farm, and they get 25% from solar rooftops, which they have a lot of in Columbia, plus their solar farm. And that came online in 2015. They have a contract with a big company that does these. They'll pay off over 20 years and own the farm at the end of 20 years, with the other company putting in the money up front. I went to the website at Columbia and found that all of their buildings have been given energy efficient analysis and retrofitted and put in very modern equipment on heating and cooling. I found out that they are in a program with EPA. They're one of 13 cities in the nation who have put in LED lights on buildings through the city, and especially on everything owned by the council. And with the LED lights plus the retrofitting they've done, they have reduced the carbon print on those buildings by 20%, and the carbon put into the atmosphere from those buildings by 50%. And then at the same time, they're going to be cheaper to maintain than would ever have thought possible before.
If you could wrap up, I think you're just a touch over your time allotment.
Okay. Well, just to say that I'm hoping that you might send a committee or a group to Columbia and look at what they've done and see if there are things that we could do that would add to what we are already doing that would just make sense for the council and would put us further down the road.
We appreciate your sentiment.
you.
We're going to hear in a few minutes from the Sustainability Council or the group, so we'll be hearing more about all the ongoing efforts. But thank you so much for your thoughts. We appreciate them. All right, let's move on to our next speaker, Erica Myers. Welcome. Followed by Mr. Cash.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Erica Myers. My day job, I'm a full-time electric vehicle researcher for a national nonprofit, and my title is Principal Transportation Electrification, so I work with people every day who are looking at electric vehicle programs all over the country. At night and on the weekends, I'm a full-time mom, and I have a 4-year-old who is enthusiastic about electric vehicle technologies. It's all she's ever known because my husband and I bought an EV last year. It's a Nissan Leaf. We both love this car. It's fantastic. It saves us a lot of money. It's great at acceleration, and it's quickly become our car of choice. We almost never use our second car, which is an SUV. And this is my first time speaking to the City Council, despite having lived in the city for 5 years. So finally here to speak to you all. When we bought our car, we realized that there was no charging infrastructure in the city. We looked around, and some of the more popular places to park, we couldn't find any. We have our level 1 plug at our home, which is basically just a 120-volt outlet, and that's what we've been using to charge our car. But sometimes we like to come here and, downtown, use the restaurants and go shopping at Harris Teeter. And we would like a charge in between in those sorts of errands, and there was none to be had. So I wrote an op-ed to the City Falls Church Press and suggested some things that the city could do to accommodate electric vehicles like mine. And I was quickly invited by the Energy Transition Subcommittee to present to that group and present some of my ideas. Since that time, I've been helping this group facilitate introductions to my network of electric vehicle companies around the country, and have been able to help get some free charging infrastructure for the city, including some from EVgo and Electrify America. I've also been working with the ETS on outreach to Dominion Energy to see if we can take advantage of some of their upcoming electric vehicle programs offered here in Virginia at the encouragement of the Virginia Public Utilities Commission, and identify funding that we can get for the city to help expand our electric vehicle portfolio. Electric vehicles, beyond just helping with climate change and air quality, which are both very obvious, I would like to also point out economic development opportunities for the city. The average car driver can save up to $2,000 a year. My husband and I like to think about every dollar we spend in terms of daycare costs, and it's a little over 1 month of daycare, which is significant for our family. We also, there's also studies showing that it can save an estimated $3,000 a year, or $3,000 over the lifetime of one car, in terms of just energy bill savings. So Dominion Energy having more electric vehicles on the roads means that they can utilize their grid more efficiently, which means depressed bills, energy bills for everyone. So, and there's many more economic development studies as well in terms of how you might be able to use those dollars and pour them more into other programs to help with local economy and local economic development in other ways. So happy to answer any questions, but those are my comments.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And by the way, Mr. Lazaro, who was here earlier, is actively involved. And I don't know if you've had occasion to speak with him previously, but in the VW settlement and the like, with that for the region. So you guys might want to connect as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if Mr. Z, do you have anything to add?
Well, just one, if no one else mentions it this evening, thanks to the work of Erica Myers, we are negotiating a long-term contract with the group's EVgo, part of the Soma dollars that would eventually result in a few chargers in the city parking lot behind Clarendon State Theater and whatever the new restaurant is, the Italian restaurant is going to be. So I think in addition to making Falls Church walkable, bikeable, scooterable, that if this could be a destination for those that own electric cars and come to our city, enjoy our shopping and entertainment, and plug in, that'd be something pretty cool that nobody else has. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and thank you for your great work on behalf of the city. We appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Mr. Cash, followed by Ms. Keenan. Welcome.
Thank you. Council, thank you for hearing me today. My name is Thomas Cash. I'm a resident of 301 West Broad. I want to come forward today about the ESC's plan that will be spoke about today and actually issue a challenge to the city as well as the staff. We have very few opportunities in the city because of our size to develop environmentally friendly processes that will affect our neighbors. With all new buildings, the city should challenge to hit the highest environmental standards. I understand cost is always a consideration up front, but the back-end costs when it comes to maintenance as well as worker productivity and employee retaining is much higher in buildings that are energy efficient because they're healthier and they're much more pleasant places to work. I will keep this short. I know we've had some long-winded players, so thank you. Just think of that when you go forward.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for your service. Our next speaker is Ms. Keenan. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Grace Keenan, a senior at George Mason High School. I live at 309 North Virginia Avenue. I wrote an op-ed that recently appeared in the Falls Church News Press about our city's need for electric vehicle charging stations. I'm here because of climate change. The future before me may be much scarier than the future you held at age 18. I fear our planet will be barely livable in 60 years, at least many parts of it. I'm not proposing a Green New Deal, but we need to do everything we can to stop heat-trapping carbon emissions. We need to electrify much of our infrastructure and make our power grid as clean as possible. We need electric vehicles, or EVs. To spur their adoption, we need to provide access to charging stations. Research shows people are less likely to buy an EV if they have no place to charge it. Obvious, right? Arlington and Fairfax counties have lots of public EV charging stations. Why not us? We currently have none. Nada. These stations don't have to be expensive, especially if you're just running a conduit to prepare for future installation. We need to be ready. Retrofitting later will cost a lot more. The good news, there's money available. To settle its emissions cheating scandal, Volkswagen agreed to spend $2 billion to fund EV charging stations. The little city is wisely seeking these funds for City Hall stations, but we can't stop there. Let's require all development projects, especially the Mammoth West Falls Church one and the adjacent new high school, to include EV charging stations. Or at the bare minimum, let's require they run the wiring to be EV ready. Let's be ready. Climate-wise, we have no time to waste. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very eloquent remarks. Would you like a pen? Would you like a Falls Church pen? Come on down. I make sure all the students get those. All right. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything on that front. No. No, we can't top that, but we are thinking about it, and I think you'll find the West End is going to have a whole lot of environmentally sustainable features, design features, as does the school. But we'll hear a little bit more about that maybe later this evening. That's all I've got as far as speakers who have filled out slips at the present time. If there's anyone else in the audience who would like to speak but has not yet filled out a speaker slip, I invite you to do so now, or you can speak when the item that you're interested in is heard later this evening. Unless there are any other speakers, we're going to go ahead and move on to the annual report of the Environmental Sustainability Council. So let's have that then. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Corey Firestone-Weiss, the chair of the Environmental Sustainability Council, and I completely endorse everything that all of the prior public commenters have said. What a terrific lineup tonight. So this is the annual report of the ESC. The ESC has 9 spots open. We currently have 9, it's a 9-member council that advises the city on all matters environmental. We currently have 7 spots filled. I was the chair of the ESC in 2018. Thomas Cash was the vice chair. His term has expired, so we now need to fill that spot. We have 3 subcommittees. The Energy Transition Subcommittee, led by Tim Stevens, who's here, I think will make a couple remarks. The Education Task Group, led by Sarah Bailden, and the Habitat Restoration Task Group, led by Melissa Teets. I believe those task groups are open to any city resident, and we have 13 non-ESC members who participate in those committees, so it's terrific. And we would be nowhere without our staff liaison, Kate Walker, our environmental programs coordinator, and Kate Reich has been stepping in for Kate Walker while she's been in London. Just in terms of the highlights of how we spent our time last year, we dedicated quite a good amount of effort focusing on the West End Economic Development Project, RFDP. As many of you know, we hosted 2 panel discussions in the earlier part of the year, inviting experts on sustainable and resilient development to come share their knowledge with us. As one of our public speakers noted, there's a lot of expertise in this area, and we took advantage of that. We were very happy to see that the RFDP for that project included LEED Gold certified buildings, a LEED neighborhood development certified community, and stormwater design that includes green infrastructure and tree canopy. And we're looking forward to continuing to stay involved in that process, including a meeting on this coming Wednesday. I just wanted to offer, just point out that Anu Gupta from one of the big events for the ESC this year was we approved the fiscal transfer of the Operation Earthwatch from the city to the Village Preservation Improvement Society. So Anu is here to answer any questions about that. And Tim, I don't know if you want to mention, there you go. Anything? Go ahead.
Thank you, Court.
I'm Tim Stevens, and I'm the current chair of the Energy Transition Subcommittee. It's a committee that's made up of volunteers in the city, people who are interested in identifying ways to reduce the use of electricity that are derived from fossil fuels. Our fundamental goal is to help the city reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, as the scientific community's nearly unanimous conclusion is that these emissions are the main cause of global warming. Since this group was formed over a decade ago, one of its ongoing efforts is to obtain a measurement of our city's greenhouse gas emissions. And with the help of the Metropolitan Council of Governments, we now have a reliable tool for measuring our emissions. The news at the international and at the national level, unfortunately, is not good. Our emissions, rather than declining, are continuing to increase. For our city, the news is a little bit better in that our emissions have declined slightly since 2005. But we're not on a path to meet our 2020 and our 2050 goals. Our subcommittee continues to look for projects to reduce our greenhouse emissions in the city. And we've agreed to work with NBRC, as you've heard with Bob Lazaro this evening, to again support Solarize. It's a program that makes it easier for our residents to install a rooftop solar system. So it's a voluntary program, but it's made challenging in Virginia by a number of restrictions imposed by state laws. And as a consequence, our committee supported legislation called the Solar Freedom Bill that would remove many of these restrictions, thereby making solar access more accessible to more of our residents. So we urge the city to include the Solar Freedom Bill in its legislative program, and you did, and we thank you very much for that. The bill came close to passing, and the elections this November could improve the chances for its passage in the next General Assembly. We've worked on a number of other projects that you've heard about this evening, the conversion of our street lights to LED technology, and advocating for improved energy efficiency designs for our municipal buildings, including especially our planned new high school. We've remained mindful of our small size as a city, and we focused on projects that do not affect our general fund and have economic development and cleaner air as short-term co-benefits. Property Assessed Clean Energy, or PACE, is an example of this. And over the past year, we've elevated our attention on conversion to EVs. And I'm very appreciative to the speakers that came out this evening, Bob, Erica, and Grace. And I'd like to think that we're close to having these 2 high-capacity charging stations, but we need to complete work on a contract. And while we haven't asked for funding for our projects, they do require help from city staff. And staff resources for our projects right now are especially in short supply. So I'll conclude by encouraging you to get more involved in the effort to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and to make it a priority along with the other priorities that you work so diligently on. Not doing so and just continuing business as usual with respect to energy use is nearly guaranteed to leave our future generations in a highly degraded environment in which to live. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I took 3 minutes just to simply say who was on the ESC. I just want to add one more thing, which is that the main focus of the second half of the year for us was on the update of the natural resources chapter of the comprehensive plan. This is a document where the city can really enshrine its leadership goals. And to summarize all of the ESC's effort in that document and what we'd like to see going forward are just 2 words: climate change. Now's a chance for us to implement policies that will help us reduce our impact and help our city prepare for the impacts that we will face in the future. So I don't know if did you want to say anything on Operation Earthwatch, or Anu is available for questions, I guess, if the City Council has any on Operation Earthwatch.
All right. Well, thank you, first off, for your fine work. I think over these past few years, we've really had a renewed focus on environmental sustainability here in our community. If you look even at the Mount Daniel expansion, which to my recollection wasn't lead anything to going to a net zero ready school in just the period of a few years, I think really speaks to the commitment of our community towards sustainability. But we thank you all for your leadership in helping us get to where we're going. But in the meantime, why don't we see if anyone has any questions or comments for you or your colleagues. Ms. Hardy.
Great. Thank you, Corey, for really the impressive focus in this year, and as well as I read through Appendix C, which I think is the ESC's comments, and clearly you guys are very passionate about this, and there's a lot we can do. In trying to distill many, many pages of things that could go in the comp plan or your comments in the comp plan, are you able to say kind of maybe like top 5 things we really should be focused on in the next kind of several years? Because clearly there's a lot of opportunity for us to focus. What do you think is the most impactful things that we should be working on? And then certainly from City Council's perspective, what can we do to remove roadblocks or put staff on or put money towards to make an impact?
I think all the development that's happening right now, the redevelopment in the city, is an opportunity. So I would emphasize, I think the ESC would emphasize sustainable building policy, making sure that every new building that goes into the city has the minimum energy usage intensity and ideally is zero energy, like our high school. I would underline all of everything that you've heard here about electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We're looking, so EV charging, green building policy would really underline the need for a climate risk assessment. All of our stormwater projections use historic data. Nothing's looking at the increased precipitation that we're likely to see. So let's look at that increased precipitation and the increases in heat we're likely to see, because that will affect our infrastructure and our community's health. And really, I think we would support the Tree Commission's efforts to keep the tree canopy that we have and maximize the green infrastructure that we have in the city, because it helps protect against climate change, it helps air quality, it helps with stormwater, and it's beautiful and contributes to economic development in cities. So I think those are some of the top issues that we would support.
So on that first point, because I had a feeling you would talk about the green building policy, related to kind of a topic we talked about last week, which was around the library project, and I think opportunities to essentially do some cost cutting given that construction costs have come in. I would love for staff to make sure that we are getting ESC's input on some of those cost cutting measures, because our understanding of it, which I think many of us expressed concerns over, was that it would actually reduce it from kind of being LEED Silver and some other sustainability issues. And so I want to make sure that, while the ship has sailed in some other projects, with the library, the high school, other projects that come, that we do hold a high bar for ourselves. So I would love you guys to kind of weigh in on that too.
That would be terrific.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Lichtenhouse.
Yeah, Corey, thanks for that. I just want to say in front of everybody and on the record, for you and Tim, I had the distinct pleasure working with you guys on the high school evaluation project as well as the West End, and the amount of hours and dedication and research you guys put into environmental issues on city projects, specifically those which I got to see firsthand, are just absolutely commendable. So thank you guys for the hard work that you've done. I think that there's a lot of folks out there that don't realize that, but you guys put some serious blood, sweat, and tears into the evaluation and consideration for those projects. So thank you guys very much. I will say, as it relates to that West End project, I know that you guys are all over it, and I would certainly encourage council, as well as the community at large and the ESC, to hold staff, city, the developers accountable for delivering, truly exceptional, sustainably built project. I mean, this is a chance for the city through that entire site to set the tone. And I think that everything that's been said tonight is incredibly important. We are facing some serious risk related to climate change, and this is a chance for us to incorporate some of those solutions into a project, and that includes EV stations, Grace, at every new project, and I think that we've been able to successfully accomplish that over the last couple of years as that consideration. So all of those are very important, so thank you guys very much for all of your efforts and all of your work here.
All right. Mr. Duncan.
Just one thought. I'm glad you're here tonight because I wasn't sure where I was going to put this thought into the meeting, but there's been some traffic over the weekend online about the mixed-use special exception process and how that has affected the tree canopy on some of the big projects, specifically the Founders Row project. Without getting into that, which is now underway, let's look ahead. The discussion turned to the Falls Church Gateway proposal, and the arborist said that the tree canopy she estimates now on that property is about 25%, I think. The developers have proposed a plan that would have a tree canopy of approximately 5.5%, I think. So that's a big gap. I had asked at the very beginning of the discussion process over the gateway, is there any way that we can preserve some of the trees at the corner of Haycock and Route 7, just as almost a symbolic signal that, you're in Falls Church, Tree City, USA, doesn't look like every other place you've seen. And I kind of got the feeling that everybody thought that was not going to be possible to do for a variety of reasons. Topographic, economic, site flow. If all the trees at that corner go, it's just hard for me to imagine how it is we're going to, get anywhere near to even double-digit tree canopy on that site. So I don't have a solution to that at all. And I'm looking to you all to help us figure it out and to explain, if there is no way to get to 25%, how there are other attributes of the development that are green even though they're not tree canopy. And that on balance, whether it's electric vehicle charging stations or enhanced stormwater management or, the whole buffet of things that we do to try to be green, work out to be compensating for the most obvious loss of the green, which is the cutting down of the trees. So that's a long way of saying I'm looking to you for advice about what we tell the developers in the comprehensive agreement when we nail it down on that tree canopy issue specifically. Thanks.
Thank you. That is a focus of ours, and that is one of the reasons why we were advocating for green infrastructure from the very start, is that in a dense urban neighborhood, tree canopy, can be challenging. There are other ways to do it, but building in green infrastructure, green walls, maximizing the use of stormwater as, trees as stormwater capture tools. And thinking about Canal Park down in Washington, D.C., I think those are ways that we can maximize the greenery in this development. And there might be other ways that we can work with the developer to come up with other solutions as well. I believe in Founders Row there was some compensation for loss of ecosystem services for the tree canopy. So we'll work with our tree commission folks and take their lead on that as well, of course.
All right, Mr. Snyder.
Thank you very much for your work. Thank you for the work of your group, and thank you for everyone who's spoken tonight. I did want to make a couple comments. Thanks to the citizen comments tonight, I know that I will take back this electric vehicle issue more to the regional boards and committees that the city is represented in. I do want to put on the record that in addition to what we're doing locally, a number of members of City Council serve on regional boards. Dan chairs the Climate and Energy Policy Committee. I chair that Metropolitan Washington Air Quality Committee. And I have to say this, that we were making significant progress in air quality in this region and across the country, partly as a result of not only what we do locally and regionally and statewide, but also, of course, what the Environmental Protection Agency requires. So it's extremely dismaying to me that we see a retrenchment on the part of the Environmental Protection Agency with regard to air quality and water quality. So I wanted to put that on the record and indicate that we're doing everything that's within our power to prevent that sort of retrenchment. So I just wanted to say that everything that you've said has been heard. Everything that the citizens have said tonight have been heard. And we're going to keep working locally, regionally, statewide, and nationally to do what we can on this issue. And please keep the information and the ideas flowing to us. Thank you.
All right. Unless anyone else has anything else, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Chair Firestone Weiss, for all the work that you've done on this. That I've been with you many of the steps, not all of them. I know that you've done extraordinary things to bring panels and experts in the city a year ago to inform our process on the Upper West End development and on the schools. And I think it's admirable that you have remained on point in the forefront, being a mother of two small children and having gone back to work, drawing on your credentials as a former employee of Price Waterhouse Coopers. I know that your talents are in high demand, so we're really lucky to have you here working on this. And I think for me, it's extremely heartening to see the broad demographic of people in the city demanding action from people who live in the Byron that have, I would say, recently become awoke, to people like Tim Stevens have been working on this for many years in almost a subterranean sense, to students like Grace Keenan, who has decided to come out and is demanding action. That it's not enough that we just talk about wanting to do something or having to do something, but now is the time to do something. So we're kind of surrounded, which is kind of good. We have people on city council that have the same sense. I would say that even as recently as maybe half a decade ago, this kind of thinking would have been, well, that's nice to have, but we'll take that up if we have enough money left over, or if we can get some degree to do these things. And of course, we know that the Commonwealth of Virginia is blind to the kind of wealth that can create for the common good of Virginia by ignoring all of these things that we're talking about. But we will make a difference, if not next week, next month, if not next month, this year, if not this year, next year. We will eventually get it done. So thank you, Corey, and everyone else here.
All right. Well, a lot of passion, a lot of brain power, and a lot of good work being done. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right. So let's move on now to our council requests. Anyone have any council requests? Ms. Hardy.
I had, one related to actually the discussion we just had on the environment. So given all the impassioned public comment about EV charging stations, and I know we have some emails about this, could staff give us just an inventory of how many chargers we're expected to get, where and when? Because I know that some are in progress, some are in public lots, some might be in private developments, but it'd be helpful to have an overall view of how many can we expect across the city, and maybe even issue a map, because I think
this is perfect GIS. Yes, and we can do that. One thing that wasn't mentioned in the comments is the proffers in every mixed-use development approved, really, I guess, probably in the last, since Founders Row, EV stations are part of the parking program there. But we need to map those out. The Hilton also has EV capacity, so that would be on the map as well.
so while there may not be any on the ground right now, it sounds like we have some on the horizon soon to come.
That is correct.
And I think one of the speakers talked about the economic development potential. I think certainly people seek these out. So when they're coming to shop and dine somewhere, they want to find a place where they can charge their car, and they're willing to spend money while their car charges for an hour. So I think there's a lot of potential there. My second request, and I think others on this email earlier may want to talk about this too, is around the sidewalk hazard on Timber Lane. If we could maybe talk about that in your either report to us or maybe now as a request, I think that'd be great to update everyone on council.
Sure. We had a call this morning about a young girl who tripped on the way to school with a heaved sidewalk. We have an ongoing program with a contractor who goes in with a precision cutting saw, and it shapes the sidewalk to smooth those areas out. So we did go out after receiving that call. Robert Goff, our head of operations, went and walked the sidewalk. He contacted the contractor, who was not scheduled to come until later in the year, but Mr. Goff prevailed upon him to come. We expect that he will be here and working on Timber Lane within 3 weeks. The program is good. If you've seen it around the city, it really makes a very smooth, it removes those hazards. Those old sidewalks also are stored carbon, but they also, the old sidewalks tend to be our toughest sidewalks. It seems like some of those old sidewalks actually are tougher than new poured concrete for some reason. So it's good to keep them where we can, but we just need to make them smooth. And so that work is in progress. We also did walk the Tiger Trail and are looking at other sites. It's something that we most often hear from the senior community as you know, with appreciation for that program. But we want the sidewalks to be safe for everybody.
Sorry, I just want to ask a follow-on to that, because this is a neighbor of ours whose child had that accident. So in terms of the Tiger Trail, in terms of funding and timing, because there are a lot of kids that ride the razors and the scooters and the bikes on that trail, How long does that typically take? How long would it take to resolve that issue for all of the Tiger Trail, for all the walkers to school?
I'd need to get back with you on that. The budget for this contract is $20,000 a year, and so we take a bite out of it each year. So I'd need to get back with you in terms of getting all of our safe routes to school routes covered.
What does 20,000 typically get us? I mean, if you're talking about grinding specific panels,
Need a linear feet. I'd need to get back with you on that.
I'm surprised you don't know that right off the top of your
Yeah,
head.
sure.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? So was the sidewalk bumpiness related to just normal heaving and aging, or is it related to construction? Because I thought that was 401 Timber, which I think is undergoing redevelopment. Is it related to that work, and if so, is it something that we can hold the contractor accountable for?
It's it could be a number of causes. One could settle. One could be heaved up because of the freeze-thaw cycle. Most often, it's because of tree roots. But each one's probably different.
So I think next on our list, besides going after the Tiger Trail, it'd be great if we could prioritize other just high traffic areas in the residential neighborhoods, which could be school bus stops, could be, like Park Avenue might be one where we see a lot more pedestrians. I'm sure 20,000 doesn't get us very far, but it'd be nice to have a list of kind of next areas to tackle. Thank you.
All right, any other requests?
Just a quickie. Our new solid waste collector does the cans along the commercial corridors too, is that right?
That is correct.
Broad Washington. So someone observed in a communication to us today that the lids on the cans don't get reseated when the trash is picked up. Could we just communicate to our new solid waste contractor that that is something that we would like to see? I think I know why, because they do it in a hurry as they go down Broad Street, and the guy, I think it is a guy, jumps out and throws the can in, and the truck moves on. He really doesn't have time to reseat the can, but that is sort of
Yeah,
the point of
we
having-
tell them all the time, and apparently we're not telling them the right way.
Apparently
And
we're
so
not out
we need
there
to find a
with
better
them.
way to tell them, because it's a complaint we've received in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I observed that one day following the truck, and so I didn't want to jump out and tell the guy to put the lid on, but somebody needs to. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Z.
This seems to be Civic Beautification Week or comment period. So it is springtime, isn't it? So the unfortunate vehicular engagement with some stone at one of the fake columns at the Byron, that's been off now for the past year almost. The stone is sitting to the side, it's wrapped in yellow tape, and also the I guess it was a car. Can't think of a person strong enough to do that. That ripped up the side railings next to the locker room. That's now been over a month. So one, maybe two is just do we have to wait for three before we contact these people to fix them? I think it's just messy, it's sloppy, it's spring. They ought to fix it up, and it doesn't cost us anything. Thank you.
All right, any other council requests? If not, let's move on to the report of the city manager.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I will take the manager's report to present the FY 2020 budget, and with that, I'll go to the lectern.
You want me to get one?
Thank you, Mayor Tarter, members of council. It is my honor to present the plan for FY 2020 to you tonight, along with the 6-year CIP. Before I get started, I want to thank our finance team. Kiran Bawa is here tonight, and this budget clearly would not be able to happen without her steady guidance and hard work on it. Melissa Ryman is really our key person in putting all of the budget numbers together, and Cindy Mester, who leads our CIP and is a crucial advisor on all things with the budget. This year has been a good collaboration, I think, also with the schools, and I want to thank Dr. Noonan and the school board and that whole team. Last summer, the council will recall that we discussed a revenue sharing agreement, and we haven't adopted a revenue sharing agreement, but I think those discussions did help the stage for, I think, a very collaborative budget process this year. With our budget process, it is a plan for 2020. It starts with the council's vision. It flows through the comp plan chapters and the area plans. That flows into your 2-year work plan, and then that flows into your budget guidance. So all that background planning feeds into the budget process. One of the themes that you'll see in this budget that I'll present in just a moment is the investment in our workforce. And our workforce is so crucial to accomplishing all of our goals. We need really passionate, talented employees who work with the community to accomplish really ambitious goals. And hopefully you'll see that in this budget, and you see that in all of our work in the city. So what we'd like to cover is just some highlights from the operating budget. Then I will turn it over to the chairman of the school board, Aaron Gill, for a presentation of the school budget. We'll do a quick run through of the utility funds and end with the capital improvements program. Council budget guidance was adopted in December, and a couple of the key points with it were to maintain our excellent general government services and our excellent schools. This budget that I'll propose to you, I'm not proposing an increase in the real estate tax rate, and there are no changes to any tax rates, local taxes or water or sewer rates or stormwater fees. We're making investments in the business district, neighborhood traffic calming. We're meeting our obligations regionally with WMATA, and we have been very successful with a team effort, but Cindy Mester has been key in this, Councilmember Dave Snyder as well, and bringing transportation dollars to the city and putting them to work. A quick overview, the general government budget will be growing 2.4%, or just under $1 million. The school transfers growing 2.5%, just over $1 million. Our WMATA obligations is a $510,000 additional cost. $400,000 of that is directly from local taxes, and $110,000 of that is our use of NVTA 30% money, which is local taxes, but we're using those NVTA funds to meet our obligations as well. But the big story in this year's budget, and the reason for the budget guidance of maintaining discipline in our operating budgets, is the very significant increase in debt service. So we will be increasing debt service in FY20 to the tune of $4.3 million, or 46%. And that has really been driving all of our financial planning, and that's not the full step up in debt service. We'll have another significant step up in the year 2021. Overall, then, the FY20 budget will be $99.3 million, and with that increase in debt service in particular, that's a 7% increase over 2019. Just a quick chart. You all are familiar with this chart, but this is where our revenues come from. The general fund with a budget of $99.3 million. Real estate taxes comprise 59% of the city budget, and we've broken it out here in terms of the commercial component of that and the residential component of that. The next sort of 30% of that pie chart are all business taxes, sales taxes, meals taxes, and the like. And then from there over are grants, charges for servers, and other uses of funds as listed. Local tax revenues, a couple of things just to note. The real estate tax is slated to go up 3.4%, and that's because assessed value is growing overall 3.4%. Meals taxes and sales taxes are strong, and we're reflecting that in the budget. You saw that in the mid-year financial report. Business licenses and other taxes, on the other hand, are basically staying steady or slight declines. So that's a survey of some of our key local taxes. As I noted earlier, overall assessed value is growing 3.4%. The total AV in the city now is $4.28 billion. So for those who like to do the shorthand math, a penny on the tax rate generates $428,000. Our old shorthand was $400,000 as a penny on the tax rate, and we're outgrowing that each year. New construction composes about 44.6% of that growth in AV. Market valuation increases is the rest of it. Our real estate tax rates, with no change to the real estate tax rate, we remain in the middle of the pack, with the towns and the cities being generally with higher rates and the counties with generally lower rates. A number of these jurisdictions haven't yet presented their budget, so we can be updating this chart as we go along. And as we've noted in the past, a lot of the counties have tax overlay districts, and just using the commercial taxes that are paid in Tysons, what is actually paid is close to $1.48 on their real estate tax rate, and that is a competitive marker for our attempts to grow our commercial district. We think that's relevant. The impact on the median homeowner is a $252 impact. Again, that's the median homeowner. Some will be higher, some will be lower. And again, there's no change in the rate. So that would all be due to market appreciation, or if you had new construction at your house. So I'll transition from there directly into senior tax relief. And Jody Acosta is here in the audience. And so we can have a discussion of that tonight if the council wishes. We did have a discussion at work session, and what is built into the budget, if you'll recall, is option 3 of the 4 options that were put forward by the task force. What that constitutes is $63,000 of additional funding in FY20 that's dedicated towards property tax relief for seniors, the disabled, and for veterans. The total budget allocation then will be $390,000 going for tax relief for those populations. With respect to expenditures, again, the general fund, the main thing to note is debt service is increasing to 14% of the budget. If you'll recall, 6 years ago, debt service was about 8% of the budget. So as we're making these investments and beginning the principal payment on the second tranche of high school debt, our debt service is growing. A couple other the key things in this slide. Administration, which includes human resources, IT, all of our administrative functions, is 7% of the budget. Public safety is 12% of the budget. That includes fire and police. Public works is 6% of the budget. Rec and parks and the library is 5%. Health and welfare is 3% of the budget. And community development is 6% of the budget. But I would note that we have a number of transportation grants that go through that budget. So the kind of actual locally supported portion of CPEDS or community development is about 3% of the budget. And then the transfers are are transfers from the operating budget to the capital budget for pay-as-you-go capital investment. A couple of highlights on the spending side. So the next couple of slides are just some of the key things that are in the budget. And we have to start first with the mandatory expenditures. And they're significant this year. The WMATA subsidy, again, is $400,000 of local tax money going to it. And that's very much along the lines of what we described back in December. That assumes that WMATA stays within that 3% operating cap. And all of the Virginia jurisdictions have been unified in that position, and that's what all of them are funding. The county contract increases, these are Arlington County and Fairfax County, a $205,000 increase. Health benefits are going up $280,000. Kaiser is up 9%. Our Anthem option is going down 2%. We also have savings with our pension and other post-employment benefits, and that will be true on the school side as well. But with the returns, the positive returns in our pension fund, the taxpayers' share of that is decreasing. So for the general, for the city's basic plan, for instance, we're now at about 4% of payroll to cover our pension, and so that's been a very positive trend. Workforce investment. A couple of key things that we're doing that I'm proposing in this budget. First is a compensation increase for merit pay for employees of 3.25%. There would be no COLA associated with that, but that would be for employees after a satisfactory completion of your annual performance evaluation. That would be the merit increase. The police are on a STEP program. That's a 3% step generally, and we would add a 0.5% COLA for police. So that would be a 3.5% increase across the board for police. We will need to continue to assess for regional competitiveness. In addition, I'm proposing that we restore funding for a full-time human resources director. And we made a reduction in the budget in 2018, and Cindy Mester has stepped into that role and has done a wonderful job. But it is really crucial for the organization to have that dedicated HR leadership in the city. And Cindy has to manage about 1,000 things, and she does manage it. But in considering needs, this was a priority to get this resource back in for our workforce as a resource for all of our directors and really moving our workforce forward. In addition, we have a police officer position that I would propose that we add to the budget. This has been a request of the chief in light of population growth and calls for service. I would add one in 2020, and we will need to look at this and evaluate this each year going forward. As our population grows, as our calls for service grow, clearly the demand is growing. In addition, we're making the ongoing investment in our police vehicles. We have 3 vehicles into the budget. We financed that with 5-year debt. In addition, with the construction that is happening in the city, I'm recommending that we use the permit reserve that the City Council set aside when we had some surpluses in building permit fees. Currently, we have a balance of $900,000 in that permit reserve. So I'm proposing that we dip into that. We hire 2 building inspectors to make sure that the high school project, that when we're going through that we're not delaying anything through plan review or the inspections. In addition, our fire safety inspector, that's a part-time position. We'd increase that by about 10 hours a week, so that would be a permanent part-time position. Again, the source is our permit reserves, and we would draw about $320,000 from that reserve. We would restore that with the Founders Row fees that are coming in now. Investment in our facilities and parks. We have built into the tax rate from last year $300,000. We actually have $350,000 for pay-as-you-go funds for our city facilities. The budget also has $150,000 for Station 6 reinvestments and $150,000 in debt financed for our ongoing park master plan implementation. Here the focus is on walking, on upgrading our trails throughout our parks. Investment in our commercial districts. The budget has built into it the investment of the hotel tax of $90,000 for downtown beautification. We'd also propose in this budget, it's not listed as an FTE, but as a potential to dedicate a portion of those fees. We've drawn up a job description to help coordinate the downtown activities, the tree lighting, the baskets, but also programming for the downtown plaza, which will be completed this spring, and do all the things that will help kind of as a proto business improvement district to help that the business community continue to thrive with public events and beautification. The big item is the West Falls Church Economic Development Project. The budget has built into it the $15.7 million grant that has been awarded to the city for walkability and multimodal improvements along Route 7 in Haycock. And the South Washington Street project, that's in the budget because we've gone back to VDOT to ask for smart scale grants in the amount of $3.3 million, and that is pending, and we expect a decision of that in June. Investment in transportation is significant. We've received grants for the neighborhood traffic calming program. So in FY20, we'll have $636,000 dedicated to that program that would run through the CACT. Our intention would be to bundle projects together, contract them together, and get them done at one time. Administering grants it makes it definitely harder and slower and more complicated, but with this amount of money, we think we can make a significant difference. As council will recall, there was $200,000 built into the budget last year for local funding for traffic calming. We would propose to keep that in the tax rate, but in this fiscal year to dedicate it to two other purposes. First, to dedicate it to spot improvements that we can use in our commercial districts or in neighborhoods where we need to put in a pedestrian crossing or we need to put in a handicap ramp. This would not necessarily be tied to the more cumbersome neighborhood traffic calming program, but could be administrated more efficiently and more quickly. So that's where 100,000 of that would go. And then the other 100,000 is in the bottom line there. We've been very successful in getting transportation grants. What we need is more upfront vetting and cost estimating. So those grant applications that they go in, we make sure they're scoped properly. They're a little bit of preliminary engineering, so when we get that grant, we can roll with it. Currently, we're putting grants in without that pre-work. The grant's not sufficient. We have to go back to get more money. It slows the whole project down. But we do have to use local money for that upfront work. So I'm proposing that we do that in this way. And lastly, last year we did put money to traffic signals, and we're sustaining that funding in FY20. So positions over time, with the recession in 2011, we had significant drops in our workforce. We were generally pretty steady at just over 200 employees for the period prior to the recession. We dropped down to 179 positions in 2012. This budget would have 204 funded positions, so getting back to that pre-recession level. I will note that our population over the period of this graph has grown 30%, and the level of service expectations has grown as well. So we are a significantly more efficient organization than we were 15 years ago, and we're trying to accomplish a great deal of things on the capital side that are very demanding for our staff as well. So I will now turn it over for a presentation of the school board budget, and then after that, I will go back through the utility funds and the CIP. Chairman?
All right, thank you very much. We know a lot of work goes into the budget, and we really appreciate it. Ms. Gill, welcome to you.
Hi, thank you, council members. Thank you for having us here tonight. I want to first thank Dr. Noonan and his staff, Michelle Coppett, Kristen Michaels, and Tricia Minson, our intrepid lawyer, who put this budget together and worked so hard behind the scenes to present the very simple budget you'll see here tonight. So our budget is all based around our mission statement. As most of you know, the Falls Church City Public Schools mission statement is that we are a student-centered, innovative, and inclusive community of lifelong learners. We aspire to be the premier international baccalaureate school division. We strive to create a personalized environment that supports each child's unique needs and prepares every student to be a responsible, caring, and internationally minded citizen. That is a tall ask from such a small school division, but we think we do a great job of it. To achieve our mission, we have what we call the placemat. Dr. Noonan and his staff developed this over the summer. This supports our mission and really focuses on our three main goals, which are to deploy best practices for teaching, learning, and operations, close achievement gaps with an emphasis on special populations, and ensure operational efficiency and effectiveness. And I think you'll see our budget this year really focuses a lot on that third one. As you'll see, we have a triennial plan. This backs up the placemat. This is effectively our strategic plan. So every one of our priorities ties back to this and drills all the way down. So you've invested a lot of money in our schools over the years. So how is this playing out in our goal to be the best IB school? We have a high participation of students in our IB diploma programs and courses. We've even seen an increase in the past year of 11 students who seek the IB diploma, which is a very rigorous, demanding program. But beyond the diploma program, our IB program touches every child at every level from pre-K through 12. And we've worked very hard over the past few years to invest in this program, adding more staff as needed. And it really does touch every child. It's not just a gifted and talented program, it's an every child program. Our students, beyond academics, are really recognized nationally, state, and even worldwide for their art, music, athletic abilities, STEM, math. At every level, our Odyssey of the Mind teams competed this week. I know several TJ teams went on to states, not my son, but other people did. Thankfully, we don't have to go anymore. But many teams did go on to the next level, which is fantastic. And it was really amazing to see all those TJ teams there. We also have students who, we have a student going to Australia to play the Sydney Opera House. We've got our robotics team in the World Championships. We're really seeing amazing strides from all of our students across every level. So we've seen how the previous budgets have impacted our students. So now looking at our current budget, what's impacting this current budget? And one of the things that's really impacting us is the new high school. And the community investment that everyone has made in this new school. It's required us to really dig deep into our budget and present a very fiscally responsible budget for 2020, which we always try to do, but this is a very large ask, we know, from the community. So we're really focused on that. Keeping that in mind, we decided to figure out what is our highest priority, where should we invest our money, the small amount of money that we have, and we looked at our number one asset, which is our staff. And this year we are investing in our staff and increasing employee compensation. Our budget meets budget guidance. So in order to compensate our employees and meet budget guidance, we had to rely on reductions and realignments in our system. Last year, we found a lot of efficiencies and a lot of cost savings. This year, we've done the same, although we're kind of reaching the end of that ability to right-size the school district. And just to note that our student enrollment is projected to be 2,669 next year, which is an increase of 54 students from this September. As you can see on the graph, our student population does go up and down a little bit each year. It always trends upward, though. So the past few years, our enrollment has not come in where we've projected it, and we usually see a larger over-projection in the kindergarten years. So this year, we are scaling the kindergarten projection back, which is where we're going to find some efficiencies. And as a parent of an incoming kindergartner, I'm aware that this can make parents a little bit nervous, but we do have some contingency plans that I'll discuss later. But it was a very thoughtful decision to reduce the projections for the kindergarten year, where we've been consistently overstaffed because our enrollment didn't come in at projections. So our budget this year, focusing on compensation, we're going to give a step to every eligible employee. That's going to work out to 2.95% for each eligible employee. STEP is an ongoing commitment that school divisions make to their staff. This is not something unique to Falls Church. It's across the United States. This is just a professional expectation when you become a public servant and educator that you're going to get a step every year. We don't always give a step every year, but when we can, we'd like to. And this does apply to all of our employees at all levels. Just a note that new teachers do not receive a pay increase until they get to step 4, but this will move them up a step even if they aren't getting a pay increase. So they will get closer to a pay increase than we would if we didn't give them a step this year. Every staff member will also get a 1% cost of living adjustment. That moves our salary scale up, which makes us, keeps us competitive with other divisions who are all doing the same thing this year. So I do have background data on that if anyone has any questions. Every other district around us is providing a step on a COLA this year. We are also going to increase our substitute pay by $2 an hour. We're having a really hard time getting substitute teachers, so anything we can do to make Falls Church City a more competitive or attractive place for substitutes to come is to our advantage. For health insurance rates, we do have an increase in our rates this year, but similar to the city or the same as the city because we are in the same program. We saw a 9% increase in Kaiser and a reduction of 2.8% in our Anthem program. So this will translate into a smaller cost savings, so we've over budgeted in that area. Salary turnover is going to help us meet our budget this year. We are projecting a $185,000 of savings due to experienced employees retiring or leaving and hiring staff that's at a lower pay scale or pay rate. That doesn't always happen, and before this wasn't something we included in our budget. Now we are going to be including it in our budget, so this isn't a savings we're going to see anymore. This is unique to this year. We're also going to see savings in other post-employment benefits and the slow phasing out of this transitional retirement program that was a one-year offer to employees who were 45 years at the time who could retire early. That program is no longer available. Okay, so to help meet our budget, because while we are meeting guidance, that only covers $844,000 of the amount of money we need to compensate our employees. We are going to meet the budget through some position realignments. We're going to maintain our school planning factors. This doesn't mean we're going to see a decrease in the educational programs provided to our students. We are hoping that the realignment, and we're planning that the realignment will be achieved through attrition. So 5 positions, so where someone leaves or retires, that position just won't be filled. And then we'll move teachers around depending on the needs of our planning factors and how many students are in each grade. So we project a savings of $465,613 from those realignments. We'll also see reductions in our logistics, specifically about $100,000 is what we'll realize when we move from our current location to the South Washington building. So as I mentioned before, we are counting on a smaller kindergarten class coming in that's being projected by Weldon Cooper. And we're also making some assumptions that our large 5th grade class moving to Maryland Henderson means we won't need as many 5th grade teachers next year, as an example. But we can't predict the future, so we don't know how many kids are actually going to come in. So the extra money that has come in due to the increase in assessments and any other extra money that comes in above guidance, we're going to put into a reserve that's a staffing reserve. And we will use that money to add additional positions to meet our planning factors in the event it's needed. And if it's not needed this year, will be needed next year. So the kids are going to come, even if they aren't coming immediately to the places we thought they were. We did get our information about the state funding. It's projected to increase by 2.8%. Just a reminder that we only receive about 13.7% of our budget from state funding. So an extra 2.8% is great and nothing to pass up, but it doesn't really make a big impact in our budget. So to our budget request this year, our request matches the city manager's agreement to provide us a 2% revenue increase of $844,231 and a share in 50% of any additional revenue above the December projections, which right now is approximately $200,000, which I noted will go into our staffing reserve. Just a reminder that the revenue doesn't meet the cost of us providing the basic compensation increase. So we did balance our budget with reductions and realignments. These are one-time right-sizing moves that we've made this year. And again, they won't be available next year, but we were able to find them this year. And so we just want to thank you again for your partnership and your support for the budget request and the great collaborative spirit we've seen throughout the year working with the mayor and the vice mayor and everyone else on city council. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you for yours. We greatly appreciate it as well. Mr. Shields, you have more to go, don't you?
Wait, there's more.
Yeah.
So I'm going to speak to the utility funds very briefly and then close the CIP. So just a few more slides. We'll start with the stormwater utility. So the stormwater utility, we're not proposing any increase to the rates. Our fund is fully subscribed, though, in terms of the projects that we have scheduled. Where the monies go is for maintenance of the system, keeping it clean so it functions properly, making spot improvements, and making water quality improvements like the Harrison Branch daylighting that was just completed. One of the projects that we're working on right now is on Columbia Street, which will address some of the flooding that occurred on Labor Day that was really one of these climate change events where we got really 3 inches of rain in a very short period of time. These are the things that we have to plan for in our stormwater world. On the sanitary sewer, one of the key things, again, no change in the rates, but we do have capital projects that are going to be paid for out of developer fees. And one of the notable ones is $5.2 million over multiple years to do the West End sewer line project. I believe it's just over $3 million to do the first bit of it, and then we need to do some pipe bursting in other parts of the system to expand its capacity. But that's a very significant project that we're doing in coordination with the schools, and it's very time sensitive. So you'll see a lot of focus on that. Again, that's being paid for out of fees paid by developers. Just a moment to pause and celebrate some of the accomplishments in the CIP. We opened Mount Daniel Elementary School this year, and congratulations to the schools on that. Just 2 weeks ago, we went to the opening of the Firearms Training Center in partnership with Fairfax City, Van Buren Bridge, Cherry Hill Park Playground, the Harrison Branch Daylighting, and the Roosevelt Avenue safety improvements are just some of the high-profile projects that were completed this year. And the really big ones are in planning right now with the George Mason High School, pictured to the lower right. Mary Riley Stiles Library is in design right now, and the City Hall project, we're looking to an April move-in. So we're going through all of the voice and data systems are going in right now, fire control panel and punch list items, and getting ready to move back in. So thank you for your support for all of these projects. The Larry Graves Turf Field, that will be built by Fairfax County and Larry Graves Park this summer. The Big Chimneys Park has gone through site plan. Site plan is approved. That will be under construction this summer. And the Downtown Plaza, as I noted earlier, we expect to complete this spring. This is the Kiran-Bawa chart, and it's a good chart. There's a lot on it, but there's a couple things to sort of track through this. And the top line, taking each fiscal year, it shows the new debt service that's coming online. So the really big step-ups will be in 2020, up to $6.2 million of new debt service for the capital projects that I just mentioned. And 2021 is where we kind of peak out. And so that's on top of our existing debt service. So how are we covering this new debt service? Where the City Council has already dedicated 6.5 cents for the capital program. And of that, 3 cents came through cost savings last year, and then the other 2.5 cents were actual actions to increase the tax rate. Whoops. Didn't want to leave the BAWA chart so quickly. Were dedicated pennies that were adopted in this fiscal year and last fiscal year. In addition to that, we have the return on investment from the pension fund, which is dedicated to the capital program. So that's $640,000 as a recurring benefit. So then we have our capital reserves. So we made a contribution to capital reserves in 19, but in 2020, for the first time, we'll now implement the plan we described to the voters at referendum, and we'll start drawing on those capital reserves to smooth out that peak in debt service. So we have a $2,875,000 drawdown on capital reserves to cover debt service in 2020. That will increase to $6.3 million drawdown on capital reserves in 2021, and we'll stay at that level until we get off the peak of debt service. Now we're covering that in FY19 through the initial payment of the West Falls Church Economic Development Project of $6.5 million, and then the stream of 4 payments in each year after that. Once those payments are complete, then the net fiscal impact from the project really steps in to cover that increase. What's not shown in this are some of the options that we have, such as the shared garage option or the CDA option. Just for simple forecasting, we've just kept it at that. And then lastly, our capital reserve balances. If these payments are made, our reserves stay healthy. But our premise of this whole plan is we're relying on a third party. And so we need some resilience, and that's built into this plan. We can tolerate a 2-year disruption to the development program if something really, that we don't want to happen, but if bad things did happen, we could tolerate that. Now that assumes that would be after the initial payment of $6.5 million. So that's a fairly concise way of describing the capital plan that we have for financing the CIP. And that plan is really made soberly and respectfully of the very significant debt that the city is taking on. We currently have $55.2 million in debt that is collectively owned by all the taxpayers of the city of Falls Church. That will step up to $195 million when the full CIP is implemented, and all that debt will be issued next year. So this year is when sort of big tranche 2 for the high school is issued, and next year is when tranche 3 is issued. So our debt service to expenditures, we will exceed the city's historic policy limit where debt service shall not exceed 12% of the budget. We'll exceed that in FY20 for the first time in the city's history. The share of that debt, the green bar, the sort of the bottom of the bars, is existing debt service. And as you can see, that tapers off over time as that debt is paid off. The yellow band is the debt service for the City Hall project, the library, the Fellows acquisition, and other items that are debt financed in the CIP. And then the blue bar is the George Mason High School debt service. So with that, we go over the 12% of expenditures limit, and so that kicks us into the council's adopted policy, which is to maintain available fund balance above 20% of our annual expenditures. So in this chart, through FY18 and 19, we're in our existing policy where unassigned fund balance needs to be at least 17% of expenditures. When we kick over our debt service policy limits, then our available fund balance needs to be above 20%, and that's the purple line there. So we're in compliance with that policy, but again, we've built in 2 years worth of resilience of an unplanned delay by our third party in the economic development program. We have maintained through this with this financial plan, and we obtained really for the first time in the city's history the triple A bond rating from the 3 rating agencies. And it's worth noting the reasons why that is: strong fund balance, strong capital reserves, our pensions are healthy, and the city council has always fully funded the required contributions. The significant economic development in the city, that's really crucial to funding our plans, and the record of strong financial management by the city council and staff. And that's documented in all of their reports and their surveillance on the city. So this will sum up in the operating budget, 2.4% growth in general government expenditures, 2.5% growth in the school transfer, no changes to the real estate tax rate, and we will be using the permit fee reserve to help us manage the construction activity that's happening in the city. And then with the capital improvements program, we're really focused on the projects the council has already approved, and we're following the plan that we laid out for the voters with the bond referendum. So we will have a budget town hall on Sunday, March 24th. It's part of our Sunday series meetings, and this one will do a budget briefing as well as an update for the public on the high school planning as well as the economic development. First reading for the budget and the tax rate ordinance is March 25th, 2 weeks from now, and then April 8th, public hearing, and then April 22nd is the scheduled date for final council action. And then the budget goes into effect July 1st. So with that, the public can access all these documents on the city webpage and comment on them. Our budget, what I've presented to you is our best recommendations. We've worked hard on this, but we also know each year that the public weighs in on it and makes it better. And so we look forward to that process, and we look forward to working with you towards that goal. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for your hard work, and the schools as well. We greatly appreciate it. Speaking of the public, although I know this isn't up for action, I am going to open it up to the public in case there's anyone here who would like to comment on the budget. Seeing none, we'll keep moving on then to council comments. Are there any comments from council members, questions for either the city staff or school staff? Mr. Z?
This is a great budget. I want to commend the staff and the schools especially for all being part of this team that makes a tough budget not necessarily easy, but one that we can explain to everyone, and I can see the sacrifices that people made. So again, thank you everyone that worked on this, and I anticipate a smooth process going forward.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments, Ms. Hardy?
I will echo Mr. Z's appreciation to both the general government and schools. Definitely the commitment to live within our means, knowing that we have such a big lift ahead of us. And I hope this is certainly a discipline that we'll maintain in future years. So while we have organic revenue growth, I think we all know that that's going to end at some point. So hopefully this is something that we can keep up. On general government, I really appreciate the sustainable, dedicated focus on all the pet issues that I know I've been nagging staff on the past 3 years. So it's great to see some focus on this in this budget. Much appreciated. I think when I think about all the priorities that we're funding, it definitely trues back to the vision that we outlined for the city, the 2040 vision. The one exception I will say is really that diverse community for all. I don't see a specific focus on affordable housing. And while we may not be able to do anything about this in this particular budget, this is something that I want us to reflect on, especially in light of the demographics report we looked at last week. And we looked at kind of what our population is expected to grow to, the types of people we want to attract, and then the housing we have in place. I think it's worth thinking about investments in future years. Another general theme that I want to make sure we accomplish with this budget is how do we maintain new stuff we're building? So I think we're in this era where we're building a bunch of new things. And Mr. Shields, maybe it's reflected in the increase in, I think it's 6 FTEs, where we make sure we have staff to go against the new stuff. So I don't want to just be in this mode where we're building new parks, new buildings, and we don't have a way to upkeep all the stuff we're building. So that's something that I want to make sure we have a discussion on. 2 really tactical questions that I'll say now so that we can talk about it in work session is recycling and trash. So I know we talked about this probably about 2 months ago, where we looked at the reality for us as well as our neighbors. We're essentially paying to recycle. And I think it's probably a deficit in our budget to kind of make this happen. What I looked at when I saw Alexandria's budget is their city manager proposed increasing the recycling and trash fee by, I think it's $30 a year. I'm not sure whether it's something we want to consider, but at least I'd like to understand how much money are we losing in the recycling program and whether this is something we have to take on in future years. And the second question, I think, is it's in the political conversation in this region around civil asset forfeiture. So I'd like to better understand how much revenue we're getting from that in our police department, and is it something that we're really going to rely on heavily? And if there is a change in the Commonwealth Attorney, whether that reliance is something that's going to go away in future years, and therefore be able to plan for that in future year police budgets. So 2 really tactical questions, but hopefully a heads up for kind of work session discussion next time. Overall, thank you. I appreciate the work on this.
Great, thank you. I will note that recycling is an increase in cost, and that is something that the Public Works budget absorbed. We did have a slight decrease because of the contract negotiation we had, but then that got completely eaten up and then some by the increase in recycling costs.
All right, other questions, comments? Vice Mayor Connolly.
I just want to thank everyone for living within the spirit of revenue sharing. Mr. Shields, I have a question for you on the BAWA chart. My favorite topic, the ROI on the pension. You have in out years as being $640,000. When we put that money into the pension, we talked about smoothing it and being able to keep it level at $640,000. Do we have more than that available? Might we? I don't want to count on it because it's a smooth thing, but it seems like something that we may have more one year and less another year, and we're just going to smooth it over time.
One of the things I had the opportunity to become when I became the HR director is the pension plan administrator. And so we spent the last year working on administrative manual how to manage that water sale proceeds. The plan allows you up to $825,000 combined earnings. The budget does have the $640,000. What we're proposing is what's not used goes into a city reserve account so that as investments go up and down, we can smooth out the volatility for the city budget so you can plan on $640,000.
So will we have to take that out every year up to 825, or
No,
it can
could
just
in
stay
the
in that?
reserve so that if investment earnings drop, you can pull it out and use it for stability.
Okay, thanks. Can you share that policy with us?
We're
The
just
book?
finishing it up
Okay.
now in the administrative manual and be glad to do that.
Thank you.
So one thing I'll just note on that topic, when investments go down, the taxpayer takes a hit because it's a defined benefit plan. So we wanted to make it as clear as possible that we didn't compound that damage by having that $640,000 go away also. And so the smoothing is intended to avoid that, because that would be, in many respects, kind of the worst outcome. And anybody who recalls the 2009 period, all we talked about was pensions, and it's nice to have pensions really performing well right now.
And my big fear when we put all that money into the pension back in 2014 or 2015 was that it would just eventually disappear because it would get sucked up into the operating budget. So I appreciate that you're going to have a way to make sure it's always there.
Smoothing's important, and we're maintaining the investment of that initial endowment of the $9.2 million.
All right, other comments, questions? Mr. Lichtenhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So last year was my first budget conversation from this side of the table, and I've been told that it was kind of mid-range in terms of the budget Richter scale. But man, it felt terrible going through that. And so I know that coming out of that on the other end, working with the vice mayor and spending time with folks on the school side in budget and finance and staff, the idea of a rev share agreement was something that was very attractive. Although I'm disappointed that we didn't get to a formal agreement, it is very clear to me, just in watching Wyatt, Dr. Noonan, and others work together, as well as what's reflected in this budget, both the language in Aaron's presentation about that rev share, that was certainly exercised in spirit and in practice, even if we didn't see it formally documented on a piece of paper. So I want to thank you guys, because I just refuse to go through that process again. So I'm very, very pleased to see this budget play out the way that it did. One question for Mr. Shields, and I guess it's the BAWA chart there. Fiscal year 2022, there was a drop in the real estate tax rate from 6.5 cents to 4.5 cents. Is that in fact a real estate tax rate cut that you are budgeting starting in fiscal year 2022? Or is that some other budget mechanism that's...
That also assumes that the economic development payments come as planned. So it has to play out in entirety for those 2 cents to be realized.
But it is in fact...
It is in the model, yes.
Oh, hallelujah. That's great. I certainly, for one, hope that we can expedite that real estate tax rate cut. I think that all the pieces are coming together, and that we recognize revenue growth on the commercial side that would allow us to cut that tax rate sooner than for fiscal year 2022. So I'm hopeful and optimistic, and she's going to shut me down.
No, just to point out that the last payment is not till 24. So much for
I saw the rates as going down to 4.5 cents.
However, assuming that all the payments on economic development are going to come as scheduled, and the last payment of $7 million is in 24.
Okay.
So
I say we shoot for 2021. That would be great. Yeah. And then just two technical questions that we don't have to get into tonight. Just skimming through the budget. A couple things that stuck out to me. It seemed like anywhere where we had contracted services with Fairfax County for city services, and I think it was, I dog-eared these pages, Community Service Board, Health Services, anywhere where we had contracts, it seemed like our expenditure and growth and expenses year over year were higher, in some cases significantly higher than our own expense growth for services that are provided by city employees themselves. And it seemed to me that some of the trends associated with that didn't necessarily warrant that increase. I would just like to know, what's leading to those higher than normal increases, and are those things that we can't try to put a cap on ourselves to try to keep it more in line with typical increase?
With respect to the Fairfax County contracts, we manage those contracts very closely. Our human services staff does, Sue Richter in particular. What the county is doing is they had, I think, fallen behind in their updating their formulas for population. And so rather than hit us with a kind of a correction at one time, they're actually phasing it in. So some of it is formula-based and some of it is actual usage. But the administrative piece of it is formula-based in particular.
Yeah, it rubs me the wrong way because I remember sitting in budget conversation last year where, some of the grants or some of the revenue that Fairfax County contributed to arts and humanities here in the city, they decided we're just going to take a pass on, and then we're stuck with what I consider to be higher than normal increases in terms of our contracted services. So what we can do about that, I'm sure that you guys are looking at every angle, but that certainly rubs me the wrong way. It's like we don't get a fair shake there, but.
Yeah, we do. We manage these very closely. They're important contracts. They provide great services.
Understand.
On the Arlington County side, also, I want to just thank the police department and the finance department and Melissa Ryman and Rick Campbell in particular. We had gotten just a huge bill from Arlington County. They worked the issue and really got that issue resolved in a very satisfactory way. They corrected it. But it's because they had kept good records and they were on top of it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, other comments? Mr. Snyder?
Just two quick ones. I want to thank everybody involved so far. I think this is a very good beginning with a competitive tax rate, focus on public safety, transportation and infrastructure, and quality education. So you put it all together, and I think this budget reflects what we ought to be doing at a local level for the benefit of our citizens. So thank you for all that. And then with regard to the metro costs, we will be putting a intense focus on that to see if it's possible to bring that down. We've said repeatedly that we want to stay at the 3% or below. Christian Dorsey, the chairman or the Virginia representative on the WMATA board, said in fact we're at 2.7%. But that is under state agreements and state law. That's the basis. So I think we'll have a more thorough explanation and discussion of that so that the council and the public understands why certain numbers come out a certain way and others come out a different way. But rest assured that we're going to keep as much pressure on that as possible, consistent with maintaining regional leadership in areas like transportation and the environment. You need a well-functioning metro system or the environment around here is toast. Thank you.
All right, other comments? Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, I jotted down a few things. I'll try to go through them quickly. I want to agree with Ms. Hardy's flag about affordable housing. We spent a lot of time here in other meetings talking about the importance of workforce housing, housing supply. This council has an excellent record of planning ahead for things that we know are coming, and we know that we are going to be at risk of losing affordable housing at the fields sometime in the next half decade, and I would like to see us, if possible, in this budget year, at least make a symbolic contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund that would begin us on the road to having resources to preserve that affordable housing community. Second, as we go forward, I'd like to understand a little bit more about the budget allocation for the permits positions. I know we talked in past years about making sure that those positions come online, just when they're needed, not a day too soon. We found with Founders Row that, the project took at least a year, maybe two longer than we thought, and it's a good thing that we, paced ourselves so that we didn't have permits staff hired without, I won't say without anything to do, but without the anticipated extra load. So, Founders Row is now underway. That's great. I don't know beyond the West End what else is going to be underway of a large scale. And Broad in Washington is a project that we had worked on and anticipated we'd need, a heavy permits effort on. I'm not sure that pretty sure that's not going to happen in this coming up budget year. So just as we discuss further, I want to understand and make sure that, we're staffing those positions and not having to let people off because some project that we hoped for didn't happen or got delayed. And if we do add to the staff there, we'd also, I think, want to make sure that we're able to keep that office open, 5 days a week, round the clock, which I don't think they're able to do right now. Third, the planning factors, it took me a couple of times through the budget cycle before I understood that planning factors is education speak for class sizes. And I want to flag that it's a very good thing that this budget not only enhances compensation on the school side, but also keeps class sizes where the citizens of Falls Church expect them to be. And I second what everybody else has said about the cooperative spirit and nature of the discussions this time. It's a real pleasant relief. My only concern is I'm not sure what the editor of the news press is going to be writing about now, because there's not going to be, the usual springtime wars on the budget that make for good headlines. But I'm sure that something else will come up that will enable you to, have us all throwing food at each other. But at least for right now, here in this time, in this place, there's peace in the Gulch, so that's great. I'm happy to march in Mr. Lidgenhouse's tax rate cut parade. I think that's a great thing to aspire to, and I hope we can do that. I think it's going to happen if we maintain our focus on economic development, which is sort of the underlying story of why this budget works. In addition to good cooperation with the schools, the money that we're bringing in from economic development continues to lift up everything that we're doing here. And I think we'll need to sustain that, because there are unexpected, they're not even, they're known unknowns. One of the known unknowns is the library, which is obviously going to come in, like every project that we've done of any size here over the last 5 or 6 years, costing more than we expect. And at our meeting Monday night, I sensed a general disinterest in de-scoping, because we would end up with a building that would not even last the length of the bonds that we are floating to pay for it. So I'm hoping that we don't de-scope, and if we don't, we may still end up with a building that doesn't have as long a shelf life as we want, and perhaps we should look at trying to finance some of the gap with pay-as-you-go money rather than borrow the money, because I don't want to be borrowing money for buildings that won't last as long as the bonds that we float to build it. I think that's all I've got for now. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, well, unless anyone else has anything, I've got a few comments of my own. One, if a budget can be pleasant, this is one. So it's been a pleasure, and it's a testament, I think, to the people involved who have been a pleasure to work with, and I'm referring particularly to city staff, but also the leadership of the school board and the entire school board and the superintendent and the rest of the school staff. I appreciate the spirit of cooperation and our shared goals and shared working toward achieving those goals. I would also echo the ideas of economic development. I think we're seeing the benefits of thoughtful economic development and the reasons why we should continue to work towards creating a vibrant downtown, not just quality of life, but to help pay for all the good things we want to do here in our community. I would throw out a word of caution that we've got miles to go before we sleep. There's an awful lot of work ahead of us, and most of the projects we've seen so far have had cost overruns, change orders, unexpected circumstances. And so I think we need to be prepared for that. And as Churchill said, this isn't the beginning of the end. We've got a whole long way to go. This is really maybe the end of the beginning as far as our capital improvements work needs to go. So I would caution to be prudent going forward, to continue to live within our means, because we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. But I'm very happy that we've started off this way with this budget. I think this is a great way to kick off this budget cycle. So I think that's all I've got. Unless anyone else has anything, I think thank you all for coming out tonight. We may have one or two minor things before we move on to our closed session. And why don't we go ahead and see what those are. Madam Clerk, will you call the first item on our first readings?
TR 19-10 is a resolution to authorize the city manager to execute on behalf of the city a memorandum of agreement with the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority to pay Metrobus operating funds on a quarterly basis for up to a 24-month period for the Route 3T Metrobus extension of service.
All right, Mr. Shields.
Mr. Mayor, I would just state that the title is pretty self-explanatory, but the city was successful in getting funds using toll revenues to fund the 3T bus route, and really what that does is gives West Broad Street, the Winter Hill neighborhood, and everybody who has walking distance to West Broad Street direct access to the East Falls Church Metro. That's what we wanted to accomplish, and that's what we were able to accomplish. Carrie O'Danino and Jeff Sykes, I think, deserve particular credit, along with Councilmember Snyder, Cindy Mester, who worked this funding issue. It was a big team effort.
All right, well, first off, I'd like to thank Mr. Snyder and the others who've worked hard, and city staff, obviously, as well. And so this is another way to get people to metro stations. Really what we're talking about today is environmental sustainability, to get people off the roads and into mass transit and more fuel-efficient and environmentally friendly modes of transportation. And so, I mean, this is, I think, in furtherance of the commitment we made a year or two ago when this service was suspended rather abruptly to restore that for those folks who rely on this to get to work and other places every day. All right. Are there other comments or questions? Ms. Hardy?
Great, thank you. I think this is great, something that we are being responsive to the concerns we had back in, I think it was 2016 when the bus service was terminated. One request for staff, can we be monitoring ridership? I think I've just gotten some comments here and there that ridership seems pretty low. But on that note, I think an idea we talked about in the EDC meeting a week or two ago was actually, while we've got school board members and I think the superintendent here, is the idea of actually issuing bus passes to students to ride the Metro buses as an after-school option. So if they can't wait for the late bus, whether students be willing to hop on the Metro buses that run the length of Broad Street as a way to kind of boost ridership and as well as promoting kind of the use of the Metro system. So maybe a good collaboration opportunity between city and schools.
As part of the grant, I would know we do need to monitor the ridership so we can determine applying for a future grant, changing another route to still have the service but in a different way, and also as we're doing the rapid bus transit planning, so it all goes together.
All right. Other comments? Do we have a motion then?
Mayor, move to adopt TR 19-10.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk. Let me open it up to public comment first. Is there any person who wishes to speak to this matter? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Lichtenhouse?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yeah.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right, let's move on to the next item.
It says TR 19-11, resolution authorizing the city manager to extend a lease agreement with 400 North Washington LLC for a period not to exceed 45 days at 400 North Washington Street for municipal use for a cost not to exceed $27,000.
Mr. Shields?
So the good feeling of this meeting can now end abruptly. We are, as the council knows, working very hard to get moved back into City Hall. We have a schedule of moving back in the end of April. What is happening right now is a lot of the systems are being put in, low voltage, fire alarm panels, and that type of thing. We're relying on Verizon. We're relying on a number of vendors. We believe we're going to be moved back into City Hall at the end of April. We're asking for a lease extension at 400 North Washington to mid-May. We've negotiated with the building owner for that extension. We would love to ask for it simply, well, we'd rather not ask for an extension at all, but just for the end of April. But we believe the landowner was very firm that he had to have a firm date. And could we absolutely guarantee April 30th? We did not think that that would be prudent to do that. So we're asking for an extension to mid-May. One other thing that we need to do is once we move out, we need to get all the furniture that's out of there. We most of that furniture is going to be sold and auctioned off, so it can be reused, but it will not be moving into City Hall. And there are a few things we need to restore in that building. So we think it'd be prudent to have that 2-week period of time to get that done. The cost of the extension is a total of $27,000, $18,000 for the month of April, and then $9,000 for the half month of May. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions? Mr. Snyder?
My understanding, and correct me, Mr. City Manager, that this is potentially an item that we could raise in a future dispute with the contractor. Is that right? Potentially raise, that the delay was potentially caused by the contractor.
There's certainly damages to the city that are caused by the delay. The contract has provisions that spell out exactly how these things are handled, and direct costs are generally not covered, but there is a formula for assessing what those damages would be. That's how that would be handled. But this is a direct cost that is being incurred by the taxpayers. It is our intention not to ask the council for an increase in appropriation for this. We believe we're going to cover these costs through our operating budget in FY19. We're finding ways to do that right now, but that's in response to the contractual issues. If the city attorney wants to add anything else.
I would just add the provisions in the contract are for liquidated damages, so they would be deemed to cover these things. We wouldn't specifically get this money, but there would be damages for the delay to the extent it can be all assigned to the contractor.
Right. And the second question I have is, what if we don't approve this tonight? What systems are not finished yet in the renovated City Hall?
Well, we will not have a certificate of occupancy to occupy the building by the end of March, so we would be working from home on our cell phones.
Right.
And I'm answering in a flippant way, but it would be a big difficulty.
And is it fire safety systems and other systems that
It
are yet
is.
to be completed?
It's the systems that keep the public safe in the building as well as staff safe in the building, and those are the final things that are being commissioned, tested, installed right now. The other key thing that has to happen is the server room and the telecommunications room have not yet been delivered to the city in a state where we can set up the servers and do all of that work. And that just has a lead time. It's just those things don't get stood up overnight.
So city operations could not happen in
Right.
addition to not having certificate of occupancy.
That's
I mean,
correct.
even with a city manager's cell phone, the operations wouldn't go forward, right?
I'm just going to forward them all there.
Thank you. I just wanted to illustrate that there really seems to be no real rational choice here under the circumstances, and that it's possible we can get some or all of this money back through liquidated damages, but that has yet to be mature as in terms of further dispute or whatever term you want to use with regard to the contractor. Okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate the answers.
All right, any other questions? Vice Mayor Connolly and then Ms. Hardy.
Mr. Shields, we have another building that we have a lease on as well, right? The there's something in.
Yeah, we do for a small office, and that landlord is agreeing to the same terms, so we're working on that. That's a smaller office, and I have no concern with getting out by the end of April.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hardy?
So it doesn't sound like there's a viable alternative, but how much was the extension, the first extension that we spent, 400 North Washington? Because this is not the first one, right?
That was January 1 through March 31st, so we did a 90-day extension for just under $40,000.
And are we paying, was that a budget amendment with new appropriations, or did we pay for it out of underspending as well?
That was out of the project budget.
So this next budget amendment would be the first new appropriations, or?
Yeah, we don't think we'll be able to absorb it in the project budget.
Well, I appreciate trying to spend out of the underspending for the FY19 budget. I want to make sure there's just appropriate transparency, that if there is, we're covering it with essentially operating dollars that we didn't spend. I think is there generally a rule that we shouldn't be using that for like one-time expenditures, and this feels like a one-time expenditure, right? Paying for extension of a lease. So I just want, when the time comes when we talk about it, because I don't think this is just giving you authorization to proceed with the lease, but when we actually talk about the budget amendment or whatever mechanism we need, I'd like to have a little more conversation on that, because I want to make sure we at least account for this budget overage essentially for this project.
So yeah, it'll be use of ongoing money for one time, which is not prohibited. It's the other way around when we use the one-time money for ongoing, which is actually against our fiscal policies. So, and it'll come to council for 2 hearings as an ordinance as part of the budget amendment. So where exactly the savings or underspending will be from will be mentioned when we bring it.
So aside from this 20-some thousand, are there other budget overages from this project? Beyond the stuff that we talked about that we'll find out more if there's liquidated damages?
Yeah, we'll need to get back to the council on that. That's an evolving situation.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, in an effort to sustain the good will and feeling, I move to adopt TR 19-11.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, before we take a vote, does any member of the public wish to speak to this matter? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Lichtenhouse?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yeah.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And consent agenda items, it doesn't look like there's anything just yet. We've got some minutes in just a moment. Before we get to that, is there any business not on the agenda? Any other business people want to talk about? Any standing regional committee liaison reports? Worth note, any council member comments that weren't made earlier? All right, let's go to approval of the minutes, December 11th, 2017. Mr. Duncan?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. On line 81, I believe that our good friend David Tax was discussing the situation at Broad and Washington rather than Broad and West. And on line 85, at the top of the page, I think that's Deputy Sheriff Matt Kay. It's not what it is there. Okay, with those corrections, I move adoption of the minutes of the meeting of Monday, December 11th, 2017.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? The ayes have it. Let's go on to the next one, Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On line 79, I believe it is, although it's Tom Gittins rhymes with kittens, it's spelled with an I, Gittins. With that correction, move adoption of the minutes of the meeting of Monday, March 26, 2018.
Second. Did you move?
I did.
Oh, second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? The ayes have it. Next one, April 23rd, 2018, Mr. Duncan.
Perhaps my eyes are beginning to fail me, but on this and the next, I found nothing, so I move adoption of the minutes of the meetings of Monday.
I found one.
Oh, sorry. Excellent. I'm glad somebody else is on duty, because.
I was trying to beat you this time. I was very
Good. I'm
careful.
pleased.
On the April 23rd minutes, line 110, you just spelled Farrell has an A, F-A.
Oh, I wondered about it. That I was not sure about. That did jump out at me, but it's Farrell?
Yes.
Okay. Well, with that correction from Eagle Eye Vice Mayor Connolly, I move adoption of the minutes of the meeting of Monday, April 23rd, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? The ayes have it.
Got anything on this one?
January 14th, 2019.
Move adoption of the minutes of the meeting of January 14th, 2019, as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? The ayes have it. Or did we vote? Did we just vote, by the way? We did, didn't we? Yes.
We did just vote.
All right, great. All right. Okay, is there anything else to be said before we go into closed session? So why don't we go ahead and do our motion to go into closed session and then take a short break for the cameras to come down and to use the restrooms if people are so inclined. And do I have the resolution here somewhere to go into closed session? Did someone provide me a copy of the closed session resolution? I should remember it by now, but I don't.
I think the clerk is getting it for you.
Okay.
Now's the time for us to sort of fill the blank space with, that would be my job. At the league yesterday, they had a program on how to conduct a candidate forum. It was a good program. At any rate, April 7th at 3 o'clock at George Mason High School Auditorium. The students at George Mason, with volunteer help from league folks, are going to have a debate. Sorry, it's a forum, candidate forum for the candidates for state senate.
Oh, okay, good.
The 3 candidates for state senate, the Democratic primary, and the 2 candidates for Commonwealth's attorney. So the program runs from 3 to 5 on Sunday, April 7th at the George Mason High School Auditorium. All are invited.
All right, that sounds like a plan. And I'm just seeing if there's anything here. If the city attorney would like to write it out for me, I'll just go from there, but I want to make sure I do it properly. Oh. All right. Okie dokie. Thank you much. So upon a motion made by council member
Connolly.
and seconded by council member
Duncan?
and passed by a vote of city council, council went in a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A8. Consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. Contracts for the West Falls Church Campus Project. Councilmember Conley?
Yes.
Councilmember Duncan?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Who's next here? Z? No, did I skip? Oh, Lichtenhouse. Sorry, Ross.
Thanks,
Lichtenhouse?
Mr. Mayor. Yes.
Councilmember Z?
Snyder?
Yeah, we'll get to Snyder. Councilmember
Okay,
Z?
yes.
The tab thing is over the name, so I'm kind of just winging it here. Councilmember, I know. Councilmember Snyder?
Yeah.
And Councilmember Tartar, yes. All right, so we'll take a 5-minute break and come back in closed session without cameras. Thank you all. All right, we are back in session and ready to come out of closed session. So upon a motion made by Councilmember
Connolly.
and seconded by Councilmember
Duncan?
and passed by a vote of City Council, council reconvene in open session. Councilmember Connolly?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Lichtenhouse?
Yeah.
Snyder?
Yeah.
Z?
Yes.
Tartar? Yep. All right, we're coming out. This is a certification. Upon a motion made by Councilmember,
Connolly.
seconded by Councilmember,
Duncan?
passed upon affirmative roll call vote in open session, it was certified that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting were convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session or meeting by the City Council. Councilmember Connolly?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Lichtenhouse?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yep.
Z?
Yep.
Tartar? Yep. All right. What else do we have to talk about? All right, we're adjourned. Good day.